guys ever seen this sign? Yeah, you probably have. They're all over Kansas City. They're actually all over different cities throughout the United States, something you might not know. And when you see this sign, which you've probably seen it maybe at a bus station, could have seen it at a gym, a library, a really common place to see it is a particular gas station around. And what this sign means is if you're in a gas station that has this in front of it, the person behind you might be in one of the most vulnerable times of their life. Another thing you might not know is that cashier that is checking out your coffee or getting your lottery ticket wasn't only trained on that cash register. He was also trained to make a very important phone call. And it'll go across states to the call center that's run by this, and they will put a call out to a community organization that's staffed 24 hours a day to meet this person in need. So when you're standing in line, the person behind you could be somebody that's really struggling with trauma. This is a sign of refuge for youth that are experiencing homelessness. So how does a youth become homeless? Because we can kind of understand how adults become homeless, or at least we think we can. But a youth, it's harder to understand. They might be running from abuse. Maybe their whole life they've been abused, and they're seeking refuge from that. It could be that they've been kicked out of their house because their parents don't accept who they are, who they love. Maybe they're struggling with addiction. Maybe drugs have been in their house or easily accessible since they were children. Maybe their parents have never really had stable housing and they kind of go place to place with some gaps in between. Maybe the girl behind you just was trafficked. So let's put ourselves in the position. We can't really, because we will never understand, but imagine your house or your apartment just disappeared while you're here. Who would you call? As adults, we have the luxury of having had some time to build some great support systems. It's possible that this is really easy for you to do. Maybe, I mean, it's likely that one of us has experienced this, actually. But as we think about that, so we have the luxury of our friends are long-standing, and they also, most of our friends are adults, so they are in charge of their own household, which teenagers don't have. And so, when we start thinking about that, and what it would be like to say, can I stay with you? I don't know for how long, just until I can find somewhere else, find something for myself, we start to become vulnerable very quickly. And that vulnerability is very dangerous for teenagers, because when you're vulnerable and you don't have a support system, a gang starts to look like a family, someone who would die for you or kill for you. Drugs look like an only escape. A human trafficker starts looking like a boyfriend, someone who will buy you nice things, make sure your nails are done, and tell you that you're beautiful. So you can see that they're at risk of some really dangerous situations. Maybe the girl behind you in line, and let's be clear, this doesn't have to be a girl. Girl, boy, someone who's trans, big, small, any race, any religion. Let's say this girl, because we're going to use girl for this example, has this tattoo. Did you know human traffickers will brand their victims with tattoos? This is a common one. Initials, an animal, some sort of symbol to show other traffickers this person's already been taken advantage of. Don't go near her. But I also have friends that have that tattoo. I almost got that tattoo when I was in high school. I wasn't allowed to get tattoos in high school. The point is, you don't know who's behind you when you're standing in line at the gas station. And if we don't make help available and easily accessible, we're never going to be able to reach this population. That's powerful, right? So I keep saying support, and I keep saying help. What does that actually look like? What does that mean? And I think that begs the question, what does it actually take to overcome homelessness? You can think of some pretty basic ones, right? You need housing, you need food. If we're going to overcome homelessness, we need employment or a steady income. But it goes deeper than that, because if you don't have self-worth, you don't have confidence, and if you don't have the ability to manage your emotions, this will become a cycle. You're not going to be able to sustain any of these things. Because if you've never learned to manage emotions or your anger, and the only way you've ever managed anger or you've ever seen the people that you love manage anger with violence, and you're working at fast food, and somebody makes you mad, because it's going to happen, you're going to lose your job very quickly, and the second two are going to follow shortly after. So how do we build these skills with a population that's hard to reach? Creativity has a huge part in this. Not for all youth, because all of our brains work differently, but art has a way of overcoming some of the barriers. What we know about trauma is that trauma is often stored in a nonverbal part of our brain. And if we have a trauma before we even have language, we're never going to have the language to express that. And art can overcome that barrier. So I think that art needs to be a part of this puzzle, this homelessness puzzle, if we're going to overcome it. I'm an art therapist, which means I use my graduate hours studying the use of art in a therapeutic way. There are many expressive therapies, music therapy, drama therapy, recreational therapy, each with their own specialty and each with their own educational track. I'll be talking about my own, which is art. And know that art therapy can be used in different settings and with different populations. I'll just be talking about what I do. So I work in a community center. I work with the homeless population in different capacities. I work in a crisis shelter, a 30-day crisis shelter, as a therapist. I work in outpatient therapy, so people come in to see me, and different housing programs. But what I want to talk about is this community center, because that reaches all of the populations I just talked about, all of those youth. So the youth that are in the shelter, the youth that have been in the shelter, the youth that are on the streets choosing not to go to shelter because they don't want to live with a whole bunch of teenagers. Maybe they just don't have internet at home, because a lot of homework is online right now, and if you don't have internet at home, you're at a disadvantage, right? So we offer that at our community center. We have a gym, a music studio, we have computers, and an art studio, which is where I spend my time. So this is the stuff that I like to do, and coping is one big part, as I kind of talked about. And if we don't have positive ways of coping, we're always going to go to negative ways of coping. And that could be self-harm, it could be drugs, it could be sexually acting out, physically acting out. And so, one thing we take for granted is our walls. If I have a youth make a piece of art and they don't have walls to put it on, it's going to be really hard to keep that thing safe. So I want them to have stuff that they can put in their backpacks or keep in their pockets. These are jars. Some of them have glitter. Some of them have Orbeez. The youth love Orbeez. This one's oil and water. And these are things they can shake and just look at. And these are worry stones. So they're pieces of clay with each person's individual thumbprint in it. And then they can keep that in their pocket. And so what our youth don't always realize is, although anger does take a while to subside, that moment, the peak of it, where you're going to punch the wall or punch a person, is very temporary. And if I can have them reach for one of these things in that moment and see that they can overcome it without punching the wall, we've made a lot of progress. I also like these because they're not only having this tool, they're also taking a piece of the community center with them. So in those moments that they're really upset, they have a piece of the people who care about them and see the potential in them. And this is one that I love to do. You could take it with you. This is trace circles, but you could just scribble intersecting lines. You don't have to be trying to go to an art institute to do this. So you'll do different designs within each different section. And what you'll notice is it takes a lot of concentration, and you'll start to become calm. And you'll become mindful, which means you become more present within your body, and you kind of understand what's going on in your mind a little better. And I do this group with the youth. They always start out kind of rowdy. And then every single time I do this, by the end of a 50-minute group, they're all silent and not complaining about the music that I'm making them listen to, because I want to introduce them to new things, and I don't want to listen to Cardi B all day. Although there's value in that, but okay. So, individuality. By nature, art is an individual experience. You're the only person who can create what you've just put on paper. Someone could duplicate it, but it's not the same thing. And within individuality, I think, comes autonomy, which the youth that I work with have lost a lot of autonomy. Because if you don't get to choose where you sleep, or if you're relying on leftovers from other people, you experience a loss of autonomy. And so choosing a color is empowering. Choosing material, choosing your subject matter, those are all building autonomy. One of my favorite quotes is by Kurt Vonnegut. He says that practicing an art, no matter how well or how badly, is a way to make your soul grow. So sing in the shower, dance to the radio, write a poem, even if it's a lousy poem, because at the end you will have an enormous reward. You will have created something. That's not perfect, it's off the top of my head, but it's pretty close. And I think it speaks to the individuality, because when our soul is growing, so is our individuality. Expression, I don't really need to explain that, right? This was created with no directive, just in an open art studio time. How difficult is it to say, hey, I'm angry because I'm hurt? This says it beautifully. And on the outside, that big anger. On the inside, that hurt. So anger's large and red, hurt is small and central. And we have to be able to express our feelings in a positive way if we're going to overcome the negative ways we express emotions. Reflection, I want to ask them, what does chaos look like? What does anger look like? What does depression look like? What does peace look like? What does self-worth look like? What does hope look like? This is something I like to do. It's a Venn diagram. Well, I drew mountains, but this is serenity or peace. This is chaos. And then we have to make them coexist in the middle. And so I asked them, what is in your peace? Is it mountains? Is it a beach? What do you hear? What do you smell? Is it your favorite song? Is it just a color? That's okay too. And then what is chaos in your life? And what you'll notice with youth that have experienced lifelong chaos or trauma is that the chaos bleeds into the peace, because when things are peaceful, that's not good. That's not safe. And so whenever I do this, you'll see chaos in the peace. And I want to teach them that you can be in serenity, and it's okay and it's safe. We just have to get you there, you know? We have to get you in a safe space. And then, I think, we talk about chaos. What pieces of the serenity can we take into the moments of chaos? If something's chaotic going on around me, can I close my eyes and hear the birds? Can I see the mountains? Can I see that color? And all of a sudden, you're giving a way to cope in those chaotic moments, because oftentimes they're going home to them. Growth. This is a youth that's used many of our services, was in our shelter, uses our community center, was in a longer-term program, and comes to individual therapy. He is bipolar and describes the depressive parts of bipolar as a black hole, as a vacuum. And all of these negative words go into the vacuum with him. And finding support in our center was him reaching out for help, reaching out of that black hole. And you can see the tips of his fingers breaking apart and turning into doves that are free. And he put one of his poems on the middle. It says, I tried fighting my emotions, only leaving me empty. Once I let go, I started taking flight in my own life. Healing. This is a youth that was in our shelter years ago, continues to come to individual therapy. And when I met her, she had a history of self-harm, had been self-harming multiple times a day for years, and didn't want to do that anymore, because like I said, if we don't have positive coping, we're going to go to negative coping. So we have to replace that before we're going to say, you can't self-harm. And that, for her, was writing. And she loved to write, and she would write letters to me, and she would write poetry, and bring them to me every week. And I could kind of tell how well she was doing, because sometimes I would have 10, and sometimes I would have 2. And after a year and a half, I don't even check in with her about self-harm anymore. I don't even ask, because I know it's not happening. On her birthday this year, we ripped up those letters while we read them, and she laughed about some of them, and reflected on that growth, like how much she's grown and how much she's healed. So we ripped them up, and she made this piece, and the letters that we ripped up are the ashes, and she made herself as a phoenix rising from them. And she's in college courses now. Community. I want my youth to know that they are a part of this community and they're valuable in the community, because they don't always feel that way. And I want them to know that they have something to give and something to offer, and that doesn't mean they have to sell their body for it, because we all have hope and we all have inspiration that we can give. And so this was a piece, it's actually this size, probably not exact, but close. And we worked on it for weeks, so some youth worked on it throughout the weeks and some just once or twice. And at the end of it, when it was completed, we cut it into pieces and we handed it out, pieces of hope out to the community. And that community piece is so important, because if we want to overcome homelessness, they have to feel valued in the community. And the girl behind you in the gas station line, she's a part of your community. And I know her, I've met her. I've worked with her for years. She was sitting on the curb when I walked up, eating a hot dog. She told me she'd been raped the night before, trying to get a ride somewhere. And when that girl touches clay, she does it with more skill and more passion than most of the people I studied art with. And in the moment she's touching clay and she's molding it, she's not a drug addict, because that doesn't define her. That's a barrier. Drug addiction doesn't define anyone. So she's more than that. And in those times she knows it, and she's somebody who sees potential in a piece of earth. Because that girl has so much creativity within her heart, and she has so much potential, but just like any of us, needs help reaching it. Thank you.